What's up, everyone? This is the Next Tape Podcast, episode 58 with Mikel, and
And Tanika.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Remembrance Day. Is that right, Tanika?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Remembrance Day, but also for our American listeners, I don't want to not also point you guys out as well. We're also going
Mm-hmm.
to just very briefly talk about Veterans Day because at the end of the day, like it's all kind of similar anyways. The reasons behind why we do this is all similar, but I don't want to not acknowledge Veterans Day because it is on the same day.
Right. Okay. Uh, okay. All right. Let's begin this episode.
Remembrance Day is a yearly Memorial Day that is observed in many Commonwealth countries, including here in Canada, to remember those who died in military service and honor those who served in wartime. It is observed across Canada each year on November 11th, the anniversary of the Armistice, I believe, Agreement of 1918 that ended the First World War. On Remembrance Day, public ceremonies and church services often include the playing of the Last Post, which is a reading of the fourth stanza of the poem For the Fallen, and 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. as well. So I will be reading that poem in a little bit. Wreaths are laid at local war memorials and assemblies are held in schools. Yes, they are. Millions of Canadians wear red poppy pins in the weeks leading up to and on November 11th in remembrance. In 2020 and 2021, Remembrance Day services and events were affected by COVID-19 pandemic. Many events were either held online, canceled, or limited to a small number of participants due to fear of COVID. So Canadians memorialized fallen soldiers on Decoration Day. This is kind of back in the day before they called it Remembrance Day. These are called Decoration Day. And Paradimburge Day, which we will talk about both of those, for many years before Remembrance Day was first observed as Armistice Day in 1919. So, Decoration Day. In 1890, veterans of the Battle of Ridgeway, which was on June 2nd, 1866, held a protest at the Canadian Volunteers Monument, which is at Queen's Park in Toronto, by laying flowers at the foot of the monument on the 24th anniversary of the battle. The history of the Battle of Ridgeway was muted in Canadian military heritage and history, and the Canadian government had been reluctant to acknowledge the veterans of the battle, which I don't know why. About 850 Canadian soldiers clashed with some 750 to 800 Irish American Fenians at Ridgeway. 9 Canadians were killed in action and 33 were wounded. The Veterans Protest became an annual memorial event known as Decoration Day, when graves and monuments of Canadian soldiers were decorated in flowers. For the next 30 years, Decoration Day was one of Canada's popular military memorial days, commemorated on the weekend nearest to June 2nd. Remembering Canadians who died in the Battle of Ridgeway soon expanded to those killed during the Northwest Resistance, which was in 1885, the South African War, which was in 1899 to 1902, and the First World War, which was 1914 to 1918. Paradimburge Day, which is the other one that was celebrated. Before the First World War, Canadians honored their overseas war dead on Paradimburge Day, which was on February 27th, the annual anniversary of the Battle of Paradimburge in 1900. So I'm going to assume Paradimburge is in South Africa. I will fact check that. I will ask my boyfriend because I don't know. During the South African War, the battle was Canada's first foreign military victory. I hate that. But anyways, from 1901 until the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, people gathered in public squares in cities and towns across the country around newly built South African war memorials to commemorate their soldiers' service in South Africa. Paardeberg Day, however, was less a somber affair of remembrance than a victory celebration and an affirmation of English Canada's loyal ties to the British Empire. First World War. Let's get into that. So, the horror and mass slaughter of the First World War. World War was 1914, 1918 again, changed Canadian perceptions of war. Millions of people were killed at sea and on battlefields across Europe, including 61,000 Canadians. Although Canada fought on the winning side, celebration of victory was replaced by solemn commemoration in a sense that the country owed a collective national debt to the ordinary soldiers, mostly young men who had lost their lives in battle. This debt would be paid in perpetuity by successive generations by the simple act of remembering the soldiers' sacrifice. So Armistice Day was in April 1919, after the First World War had ended, Member of Parliament MP Isaac Pedlow introduced a motion in the House of Commons to institute an annual Armistice Day to be held on November 11th, but on the second Monday of November each year, so that they would change each year and until they eventually would land on November 11th. Parliament was still deciding on a day for the commemoration when King George, here we go with the Roman numerals, V, I think that's 5, 10, I don't know, sent out an appeal to the British Empire on November 6, 1919. He urged that the armistice that ended the fighting be marked by the suspension of all activities and the observance of 2 minutes of silence at exactly 11 a.m. on November 11th, the same day of the year and time the armistice had been signed in 1918. Canadians commemorated Armistice Day on November 11th in 1919 and 1920. In May 1921, an act of Canada's Parliament declared that an annual Armistice Day would be held on the Monday of the week in which November 11th fell. Oddly, the day was joined with the celebration of Thanksgiving Day, which is interesting because I never thought our Thanksgiving Day was in November ever. We've always had it in October. So I do wonder if they moved it purposefully to October.
That's what I said earlier. Like,
Yeah.
I always thought it was in November. That I realized it was America that was in November and Canada in October.
Well, in our lifetime, it's always been in October. I'm thinking that maybe with all of this, somehow, maybe say the 30s or 40s or something, they would have maybe moved it to October so that it wasn't at the same time as Remembrance Day. We wouldn't have that potentially happen. Yeah, because at least with America, it's never also going to be on Veterans Day because their Thanksgiving is always right before Black Friday, and Black Friday is always the last Friday of the month. So it's never going to fall on Veterans Day. But with us, I guess there's the possibility that it could. So maybe that's why they decide, okay, let's do Thanksgiving in October instead, so that we're not like talking about remembering soldiers, but then also having to find something to be thankful for. You know, like it's I think like the two things should be kept pretty separate, in my opinion.
So they did move Thanksgiving.
Interesting. I never knew that.
January 1957.
Is it in January?
Yeah, they announced it. That's when.
They announced in January. Got it.
So that's what Parliament. I'm guessing the Prime Minister. Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, but it's learned something. So yeah, that particular year though, Thanksgiving was on the same day, a day which is featuring sports, turkey dinners, and like recreation. It just doesn't feel right, you know. So this anomaly, which confused the public and angered veterans of the First World War, came to an end on March 18th, 1931, when MP A.W. Neal introduced a motion to have Armistice Day observed on November 11th and, quote, on no other date. Another MP, which was C.W. Dickey, moved to change the name from Armistice Day to Remembrance Day. This renaming placed the emphasis more upon the soldiers whose deaths were being remembered. Parliament adopted these resolutions as an amendment to the Armistice Day Act, and Canada held its first Remembrance Day by that name on November 11th, 1931. The Holidays Act of 1970 and 1985 recognized it as a national holiday. We'll talk about that because I've always had thoughts and feelings about Remembrance Day not being a holiday for everybody. I'll get to that in a minute, though. There's a point in time that I can talk about it.
Right.
So in France and Belgium, November 11th is still observed as Armistice Day, while in Britain, Remembrance Day Sunday is the second Sunday in November. In the United States, war veterans are also honored on November 11th, known as Veterans Day. And again, like I said, we will briefly talk about that. In Canada, Remembrance Day has proven to be a flexible and enduring term. It has grown to include the remembrance of war dead from the Second World War and Korean War and the war in Afghanistan, as well as from peacekeeping missions and other international military engagements. In all, more than 1.6 million Canadians have served in Canada's armed forces, and more than 118,000 have died in foreign conflicts. So let's talk about the poppy. So the symbol of Remembrance Day is the red poppy, which grows on the First World War battlefield of Flanders in Belgium and northern France. We will be talking about the poem, or we'll be reciting the poem a little later. As the artillery barges began to churn the earth in late 1914, the fields of Flanders and northern France saw scores of red poppies appear. The first person to use the poppy as a symbol of remembrance was American Moana, I believe, or Moinia, Michael, who had been inspired by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields. Michael pledged in 1918, quote, always wear a red poppy of Flanders Fields as a sign of remembrance and the emblem of, quote, keeping the faith with all who died, referencing a line in the poem. The first Poppy Day in Canada occurred on November 11th, 1921. By 1922, label-worn poppies were manufactured and distributed by veterans in Canada. The Royal Canadian Legion, formed in 1925, has run the poppy fundraising campaign in Canada ever since. Today, millions of Canadians wear the bright red emblem as a symbol of remembrance leading up to and on November 11th. The Poppy campaign raises funds to support veterans and their families. In 2021, Canada Post issued a stamp celebrating the 100th anniversary of the poppy's adoption as a national symbol of remembrance. Some organizations in Canada, including Canadian Voice of Women for Peace, which is the acronym is VOW Peace, and the Vancouver-based Peace Poppies, support the wearing of white poppies instead of or in addition to the traditional red version. The white poppy represents a commitment to peace and commemorates all victims of war, civilian as well as military. However, white poppies aren't as popular in Canada. I have never seen one, as many feel they are disrespectful to the veterans. I can understand that. I mean, maybe just leave well enough alone in this case. But yeah.
Well,
I see what you're trying to do, though.
Yeah. You see the poppy. You see the poppies on coins as well. You see it on.
I've had one. I used to have one. I don't know if I still do that had the poppy on it. Yeah.
And then the stamps as well. That they're on stamps. So yeah.
They're not white. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, they're not white.
There's also been. I remember. There's also. I don't know if necessarily the ones that you would wear were necessarily rainbow colored, but I've definitely seen like
I
murals
have.
of rainbow colored poppies. And again, I understand what you're trying to do, and I'm with, but when it comes to something like this, leave it alone,
Yeah,
please,
yeah.
because it's not
I
about that. It has to be about the soldiers, and the poppy represents the poppies in Flanders Field.
mhm.
So you have to leave it alone. I personally believe that.
So I do kind of notice like do some wear like different colors like the sergeants like I noticed like um some of them like wear like blue, black.
Like the poppies?
Yeah, the poppies.
I've never seen different
You
colored
know,
poppies.
like
The only thing that I've seen with the poppies is that like the middle piece, like the piece inside the poppy,
right,
that
right.
is I've seen that green, I've seen it black,
That's right.
but I've
That's right.
never seen like the poppy itself
That's
a
right.
different
Yeah.
color. No, never seen that.
That's what I probably meant. Yeah, the color that's inside of the
Yeah.
poppy, that the middle
Yeah.
part
I
that
mean,
changes
maybe they
color.
can be
Yeah.
blue, but I've never
Yeah.
seen blue either, but I've definitely seen
Mhm.
black because I think the poppy itself is has the black center. I've seen green.
Yeah.
I have not seen different colors though,
Okay.
besides
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Um, so monuments uh commemorating the lives of Canadians who died in conflicts overseas occupy a prominent place in towns and cities throughout Canada. So we're going to talk about a little bit of those. Most were erected in the 1920s and 1930s. Following the First World War, the names subsequent wars were later added to many of these memorials. They represent a commitment by communities, large and small, not to forget Canadian lives lost in war.
Mhm.
Every year, the Royal Canadian Legion also chooses the mother of an armed forces member that was killed in military service to represent the mothers of Canadian veterans. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Canada's most prominent domestic war monument is the National War Memorial in Ottawa, which I have seen. Have you actually been there to see that monument in Ottawa?
I've been to Ottawa, but like I haven't seen that
You
much.
haven't seen the memorial?
I probably walked past it a couple times, but like Ottawa isn't that
Yeah,
known.
it's kind of right like in the Parliament Hills near
Yeah.
there. Um, yeah, I've been there and I took pictures. It's it's incredible, honestly.
Mm.
And it really like even then, like I haven't been to Ottawa since I was 14, but even
Right.
then as a 14-year-old, you can just feel like the importance of it. And yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, it is the most popular one. Um, so it is the focus of November 11th of a nationally televised Remembrance Day ceremony, traditionally attended by the Governor General, the Prime Minister, senior Legion officials, and a large parade of veterans. There is the tomb of the unknown soldier, which I have heard of, and it's located at the foot of the National War Memorial. Yeah, yeah, I remember being told this when we were there that there was
Hmm.
an unknown soldier that was buried at the foot of it. Um, so that even bring even more to it. So yeah, I definitely remember that.
Hmm.
It contains the remains of an unidentified Canadian soldier who was killed in the First World War. His remains were exhumed from a cemetery near Vimy Ridge
Hmm.
and repatriated, I think is how you say that word, in 2000. The tomb represents all Canadians killed overseas who lie in unmarked graves. The sadness that there's many unmarked graves, people who weren't claimed, is um, just sad in and of itself as well. Um, Remembrance Day is a federal statutory holiday. It is a paid day off worked for federal employees. This is the part that I am going to start going off a little bit. Give me a second.
How do you feel about that? I
Give
know
me a
you're gonna
second.
go.
Let me finish the sentence and then I will say. It is also a statutory holiday in some, but not all the provinces and territories. Now, to answer your question, Mikel, how do I feel about this? I hate it.
Yeah.
I listen,
You think? Yeah.
I think everyone should have this day off. And it's not
Mm.
about having a paid day off. It's not about that. I don't care about that. But I want to be able to partake in something if I want to. I remember when I was working at the Bay in Toronto, this was
Mhm.
years ago, and
Mhm.
I remember looking out that window because the Bay faces the City Hall where they will do the
Right.
will do like the Toronto uh thing as well. And I
Mhm.
remember looking back at that and I wanted to sit there and I wanted to watch it. I
Mhm.
wanted to be out there and I wanted to watch it and I can't because I have to work. So it's like people want to be able to partake in things as well, but we can't. And then when you have me who works in a law firm who
Mhm.
potentially has to file things with the court, guess what? I can't file anything with the court because they get to be off.
Mhm.
So it's very confusing on that sense as well. Because, like,
Right.
for example, if you have, I'm going to go a little bit to my job here. If you have a
Yeah.
motion and you have to do something that's called confirming your motion, and you
Mhm.
have to do that in a certain amount of days. Like Toronto court is 5 days, other courts are
Mhm.
still recognizing the 3 day thing, and you have to
Right.
do that in that amount of time or you lose your day.
Mm.
So when you have a holiday like this that is recognized by a federal government, but um not every province recognizes it as a paid off day or just a day off. Um,
And
I
then
have
there's
to
people.
factor in that day as a
Right.
holiday, and I have to actually do it a day earlier
Uh-huh.
because of it. Otherwise, I'm going to lose that date. It's
Mm.
frustrating for people, and I think they could just give everyone the day off. I don't understand why, but go ahead.
Maybe um I think it's because like I feel like one of the reasons why is because like they know that people won't you know celebrate that day because of the Remembrance Day. They just like don't
But
want
that's neither here nor there because other
to.
provinces are getting it.
Hmm.
It's not like it's no province gets it. Some provinces do.
Yeah, yeah, some
So that's
provinces. But
unfair that some provinces are getting a day like this, others aren't. Yes, there is potential that people are not going to
yeah,
do that, but
yeah,
at the same time, let's not forget there are a lot of families who have family members who fought in wars. There are more families that have that than families that don't. Like my family does not. There's no one in my family well, actually, that's not true.
yeah.
I have a cousin
Mm,
who is a part of the armed forces. So that's not 100% true, but
mm,
um, he's alive. That's that's the
right.
difference. So it's not like I'm remembering someone who's currently still alive, right? But it's that's neither here nor there. It's not up to the government to say whether someone is going to do it or not, but you should still allow people to have that day and give them the chance to recognize the day and celebrate the day.
So, so what are the provinces that don't have that? Do you have that information on you, or
I don't. I used to, but I don't. But I can quickly find it.
I don't? Yeah,
Okay.
Ontario, yeah, Ontario
We
does.
we don't we don't have it.
You don't have the no?
No, no. We don't have it. We don't have Remembrance Day off.
Oh wow.
It's a federal holiday, so every federal employee has it off.
Mm.
But the provincial, no.
So
So the holiday that Remembrance Day is applicable to
mhm,
is so these are the provinces that have it off:
yeah.
Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick,
Mhm.
PEI, Newfoundland, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. So the provinces that don't have it: Manitoba, Ontario. Um, so I mean, a lot of them have it, but a few,
Huh.
Quebec is another one.
Uh,
So yeah, most of the provinces and territories, all the territories have Remembrance Day off, but
mm,
not a lot of the some of the only a handful of the provinces don't have it, which is ridiculous to me. It's pretty crazy.
interesting.
But yeah,
Interesting.
Ontario is not one of them.
Huh. Hmm. I
Yep.
wonder. I kind of wonder why. Maybe it's that reason that I said, or maybe it's another thing.
No, I
Yeah,
I don't think that's reason enough to not give us the day in the government's eyes.
I don't
For
think it.
whatever reason, the
I
government
don't
does not
think.
give it to us,
I
and
don't
I
think
don't
they
know
don't
why.
care. I don't think they don't care. I think there's got to be something that has to do with like the financials, or has to
Maybe,
do with like
but it's one day. It's
yeah,
one
towards
day. And they put their money into doing the like the parades and
yeah,
whatever else. And
yeah,
again, like it's not like the only parade either here in the
uh-huh.
in this province. We also have another day as well that kind of happens. I believe it's on the second day of the CNE because the veterans and their families are allowed to ride for free, and they have like a parade that happens
Mhm.
at the X. Um, so it's not like the only day, and that takes money. So it's like you have these two different days that
Mhm.
takes the money, but you can't just, you know, give us one day.
Mhm.
It's one day. We have family day for fuck's sakes. Do you think families are doing
Yeah,
what
we
families are
some
supposed to do, what you want them to
no,
do? No.
no,
So why can't
hardly,
we
yeah.
have Remembrance Day? You see what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's what I mean. It's just like,
Hmm. Yeah,
why not?
yeah, yeah.
Especially
I
because it
didn't.
is a federal holiday.
Yeah, I didn't get the when they announced Family Day, because like we already had Christmas. It's just like,
Well,
what do we
yeah,
need?
but Family
Like
Day was already a holiday that was seen in
yeah.
other provinces, so it was
Oh.
coming this way as well. Family Day had already been a thing in like BC, Alberta, I think as well. So it was making its way to Ontario as well. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm trying to mean. It's like
Yeah,
no one's doing Family Day unless you have small
yeah.
kids. But it's
Mhm.
winter.
I
What the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? It's not
I
like it's summer.
well, I do think this is going to be developed for the newer generations, Family Day. So like the new generations will celebrate it, but the older generation, the previous generations, and now I don't think they celebrate it that much. So
Well, no. But again, it's like I said, yes, like maybe younger families will. But again, it's winter. I can understand maybe doing family day during the summer where you can go out, you
yeah,
can
yeah,
do things, but
yeah, yeah.
you're cooped up at home because
Hmm.
it's February. It's one of the worst months of winter.
I
So
agree.
it's what are you really gonna do? You know what I mean? Like it's dumb. But anyways, this is not a
Yeah,
conversation about Family
yeah.
Day.
Well, Family Day.
Let's go back to Remembrance Day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
as mentioned, I'm gonna read the poem that's called For the Fallen. So let's kind of read that. So, with proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh, they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free. Solemn the drums thrill, death august and royal, sing sorrow up into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of dissolution and a glory that shines upon our tears. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. They mingle not with their laughing comrades again. They sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labor of the daytime. They sleep beyond England's foam. But where our desires are and our hopes profound, felt as a wellspring that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of their own land they are known, as the stars are known to the night, as the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches upon the heavenly plain, as the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end, they remain. And that is the poem for the fallen. Now let's do the poem for In Flanders Fields. I think this is one that everyone definitely knows to an extent or has heard before. So let's do that. So yeah, let's do In Flanders Fields. So in Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce, heard amid the guns' blow. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. So that is the poem for Flanders Fields. But let's kind of quickly go over the Veterans Day. Again, it's all very similar to what we do here at Remembrance Day. It's just a different name. So let's kind of go through that. So World War One, which was also known as the Great War, officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, and in the Palace of Versailles outside the town of Versailles, France. However, fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice or temporary cease of hostilities between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11th, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. Veterans Day continues to be observed on November 11th, regardless of what day of the week on which it falls. The restoration of the observance of Veterans Day to November 11th not only preserves the historical significance of the date, but helps focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, which is a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. So the original concept for the celebration was for a day observed with parades and public meetings, very similarly to what we do here, and a brief suspension of business beginning at 11 a.m. So that's kind of what they do there for Veterans Day. Again, very similar to what we do. But yeah, so
Yeah,
that's basically that.
yeah, it's pretty good
Yeah. So,
to celebrate their fallen soldiers. So like,
mhm,
yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
do a moment of silence.
Mhm.
We're gonna do, you want to do 2 minutes of silence?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna do 2 minutes of silence.
hmm
Yeah.
So I have a stopwatch going so we don't go over 2 minutes, but ready to start?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that was our 2 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
I hope you also joined us in that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I hope everyone observes Remembrance Day
Mm-hmm.
in any way that you can. Um, and yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Ends this episode 58 of the Next Tape podcast. The Next Tape podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called solo.to/Next Tape podcast. Where else are we at, Tanika?
We are on Facebook and Instagram at Next Take Podcast and Twitter and TikTok at Next Take Pod.
And you can contact us on our email at mikeltanika@gmail.com. That is mikeltanika@gmail.com. Yeah. Um, we basically talked about everything about Remembrance Day,
Mm-hmm.
this episode, including, Veteran Day in America. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good
So
episode.
yeah, it was a good episode. So, anything else you want to say, or
No, I think we've covered it all for sure.
all right. So I'm Mikal, and
And I'm Tanika.
we're out until next week, guys. Peace.
Bye.